Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
There's something called a spiritual awakening that can pretty much open the door to a better life for you, a realization of what life is like or should be like. It runs deep here. I'm not the expert. She is. AyannaKai is back with us. How are you? How's it going?
I'm well, Steve. Thanks so much for another wonderful show with you.
Nice to have you back. I want to tell everybody that you have lots of cred, but first and foremost, a spiritual advisor. You're a card reader.
Yes.
Fill in the blank.
Psychic. I'm a psychic. I'm a medium. I call myself a loveologist. I'm an oracle and a visionary. And I like to say that I can communicate with the invisible spiritual realm, right? Which is the 5D, if you would. So I want to touch base on what you were making mention of the spiritual awakening. And so that's kind of this state of enlightenment, if you would, where you're kind of enlightened in alignment, if you would, with your true self and your true God self, right? And so how do you get there? That's always the question. So a lot of people kind of touch base on an experience that they may have where they have this thing called a Kundalini awakening, which is kind of where you are in this state. First of all, you experience it in a state of meditation, right? And I'm not sure if you're familiar, which I'm sure you are with meditation. I don't know if you do it per se.
Not as much as I want to, but when we talk about this thing, what you're just about to delve into,
yes,
is this something that can last a period of time? Because I've spoken to people that have had, I believe they called it a spiritual awakening, and it was, I'm trying to get the best description. It wasn't the most enjoyable situation as they went through what they described, and it lasted a year. Some of them 6 months. Yeah. So I don't know if that's the same thing.
But the same thing.
But on the other side of it, all the stuff that we're talking about was there. It was their whole life changed for the better. For the better.
Well, I guess it depends on the person, right? On what type of spiritual awakening, because a lot of times people may have a spiritual awakening as a result of something tragic or disastrous, which is probably what you're making mention of. But then there's also, which is kind of what happened to me, is an intentional, conscious decision to connect with the divine, right? And in that connection, in that state of enlightenment, if you would, is when I had my Kundalini awakening. And I must say that this is an experience of pure love, pure ecstasy. It's inexplicable. I'm talking about happiness beyond compare, okay? And in that state of grace, you are stepping into your ultimate power. I mean, you can create, you see things that you can create, right? You think of it and it's instantly there. So it's the ultimate state of manifestation. And most people in a lifetime never really have this Kundalini awakening, right? Because it's you have to really establish yourself in terms of connection with, I like to say, connected to the masterpiece. Right? Because then you're in total enlightenment or awakening. And that's when you step into your true power, you know? But you might be referring to people who have, I don't know, had some sort of accident, right? And then they got in touch with the light.
I don't know. To be honest, I don't know. All I know is the description that they gave, and I believe it was called a spiritual awakening. It wasn't. It was kind of scary, but that they went through. Not anything that you're describing, but on the other side of it, whoa! It was just what you're saying. Life completely changed, clarity, all of that.
Right.
How do we get closer to having a spiritual awakening? Can we do it on demand? Is it something that it's a work in progress to get there?
Well, I feel like it's first of all, your true self is a state of happiness, and you have an emotional guidance system that takes you there. And here's the thing. Most people do not allow themselves to take an emotional journey, which is thought by thought by thought by thought by thought, right? And how do you know you're getting there? You feel better and better and better and better and better until you experience bliss. And when you're in a state of bliss, you are an enlightened being. I mean, are you familiar with Buddha, the teachings of Buddha? Buddha.
Loosely.
Yeah. So you see that Buddha is always smiling, right? He always has a smile. Every image of Buddha is this smile, right? And
Sure.
his messages, everyone's looking for God, right? Outside of them. They always make reference to God being in the sky, but God is within, and you won't find him until you take this journey. And so through meditation, you can get there. And so I don't know if how deep you are in terms of understanding. I don't know if you've seen the movie The Secret, um, by
Yeah.
Rhonda Burns. I don't know if you've dabbled or touched base with the teachings of Abraham, from Jerry and Esther Hicks, or if you're familiar with Hay House Radio. But there's a lot of people who are enlightened who have had this connection, if you will, with the divine. And that too is a spiritual awakening from a different premise, and that, I don't know, because I feel like that's a conscious decision to connect versus you having some sort of other scenario that brings you to this awakening, if you would. You know what I mean?
Is it possible to make that spiritual awakening connection on your own? Can you just say this is, can you meditate it? How can you bring
Well,
it to
that's
you?
what I'm saying. These are conscious choices to get
Okay.
there. I consciously, well, here's the thing. When I had my awakening, if you would, and my connection to the divine, I kind of, you get into this space where, when we were talking about when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Mm-hmm.
And so the universe then kind of gives you signs and leads you to certain teachings, if you would, to bring you to this connection. So I feel like I was at a space where I was looking for more, right? Trying to understand what was going on in life, not happy with what was happening, why things were. And so I took my journey. I believe I started digging deeper, reading things, understanding the dynamics of the universe, and trying to, I don't know if you're familiar with Eckhart Tolle. There's so many awakened spiritual teachers who that I kind of followed that premise. And then I started meditating. And in meditation is when you realize the truth. That's when you're transcending the 3-day reality and connecting to the 5-day, right? And so
Mm.
in that space, that's where your temple of worship comes into play. And that's when you experience love, joy, happiness, right? On a spiritual level, right? And then the goal is to have that transcendence right here on earth, to feel that way all the time. And that's the rub, right? And so it's a choice.
Now,
Happiness is a choice,
uh, everything is a choice, right?
pretty much.
The When you go into the meditative state,
Yeah.
do you feel that let's put it this way. Let's say
Mhm.
you're not having the greatest day, and
Right.
then you meditate to get into a higher state. Can you find that happiness, bliss in a meditation just like that?
Well, absolutely, because now what you're doing is you're stopping thought. And so
Okay.
that's all the transcendence of the ego mind, which I like to say is edging God out, right? Because you got the negative thoughts popping in there. And so in this space of meditation, there's no thought, because what you're doing is focusing on your breathing. And as you breathe deeper and deeper, your vibration lifts. And so your vibration is your thought and your feeling, because now you're bringing yourself up, you're elevating yourself to ecstasy, if you would. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And
Sure.
in that space, now you're connecting with a higher level. Now you step into your power, right? And so, but I say my life is a walking meditation, right? Because because after I've gone through that experience, I'm always connected. And so, but that's a choice too, because your spiritual team is with you, whether you are awakened to it or not. Like, they're still there. And so you get to choose to consciously connect or ignore it. And that's where I go back to being in the matrix and not being in the matrix.
Mm.
Where we were talking about that movie
Sure.
with
Sure.
the blue pill and the red pill, right?
Yep.
With Keanu Reeves.
Hmm.
So, but that's the thing. And so it's hard to tell somebody that you've had this experience, because experience is something that you have to do, like you would have to do it. But there's a bunch of people who have, maybe 1% of the population who relates, and the rest of the world is kind of what I call asleep, you know.
Isn't it amazing that why would you want to live in the state of just negativity, just bringing on all this stuff that just doesn't support you? You just,
I know.
grouchy, and I guess you
Well, and
don't
you know what
see
I
it.
say? People like to take the path, the hardest road home. I say I like to take the path of least resistance. And so it's a conscious choice, because people who are enlightened, they mostly make a decision to say, okay, before I start my day, I'm going to set deliberate intentions, and I'm going to choose to feel good, and I'm going to segment intend, and I'm going to, kind of pay attention to the laws that kind of govern the universe, if you will. They exist whether you appreciate it or not. You know what I mean? And the one that is almost as absolute as the law of gravity is the law of attraction, which is kind of which governs everything, which is the law of thoughts. And
Hmm.
so most people are kind of stuck in this state of misery because they don't want to take that emotional journey, which is kind of your inner being, if you would, or your inner God self saying, come this way, come feel good, but how do you get there? Some people will use drugs, some people will use alcohol, some people will use rage, but nobody wants to do something to make themselves happy, like watch a good movie, pet your cat, walk your dog, take a walk, do some exercise, like do something that makes you happy to lift your vibration. And then that also kind of ties into your manifestation capabilities, creating experiences that are positive in your life. And so all of it has to do with how you're feeling and thinking in any given moment. And most
Think
people live in the residue of what they thought about last.
the key point here is you don't know it until you know it. And some of the things even you said, like even just taking a walk with your dog, I'll be
Right.
busy. I'm like, okay, well, I got to walk him. Usually it's just a few minutes and then I go.
Yeah.
Then I took a 40-minute walk and I'm like, oh, this was good. I
Don't
actually
you feel
enjoyed
good?
that. Yeah, I felt like I meditated as I'm walking. I'm just
Absolutely.
thinking, blocking things out. I'm with him. So I like being around people or pets.
Right.
So I'm
Right.
with someone, him. And it was just a nice experience, but I didn't know it until I did it. And I'm just giving like a very
Yeah,
basic,
yeah. Well, that's
example.
that's that's kind of the premise. And nature, wow, that's our greatest gift right there, right? Because
Yeah.
that's just pure, and our pets, that's just pure positive energy. And in that light, I mean, because if I take a walk, I find myself in a space of grace where I'm constantly in gratitude. That's the other thing. That's the language of the divine, if you will. Because I don't know if you've heard what you appreciate appreciates, right? So I'm like going on a walk and I'm like, wow, thank you for the oxygen, the air that I get to breathe, which we take for granted. And so you want to
Hmm.
kind of be in that space to kind of intentionally choose to find things, to reach for it, to feel good,
Wow.
and that's a conscious decision. Now, most people are like complaining, they're arguing, they're fighting, and they're miserable. And then they now attract illness into their body, right? Dis-ease,
Yeah.
because you're out of alignment with your true self, who is always happy. And you won't know that until you connect to your true self, right? Your true God self, right? Which is always love, always joy, always happy. And so your higher self is always saying, come this way, come this way, come feel good. And we're like, no, I don't want to. And your higher self will never join you in that feeling of misery, which is why you feel the misery, right? Because why would it disconnect from love, from joy, to come down to misery? Because now you're affecting your manifestations, because you can only create in good, in light, in love, in joy, in happiness. And when I'm talking about manifestations, I'm saying, oh, I want this brand new job. Oh, I want this brand new car. But are you in a space of light? Are you in a space of joy and happiness to attract your highest level of what you want for yourself? Right? Because most people think things are happening to them, but in truth, they're doing it to themselves. And so you got to be aware. Well, that's why I said, are you awake or are you asleep? You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying?
Yeah.
Therein is the rub, you know?
When somebody connects with you and you work
Yeah.
with them, are you able to analyze what's going on in their life? When somebody says, I don't know why, I'm my third job in a year. I don't know why this is going on. Relationships aren't working. Are you able to kind
Absolutely.
of figure out what's going on?
Well, I can just tell based on what they're saying because I can read their energy.
Mm,
So right there with that commentary right there just tells me right there you're in the wrong space. You're saying the wrong things. You're attracting the wrong people. You're in the total out of alignment space. And so what
yeah.
that person wants to be focusing on is, oh, I have the perfect job. Oh, it pays me this amount of money. Oh, I'm living a life of luxury. I'm so happy I got this brand new car. The people I work with, they love me. You know what I'm saying? Because
Yeah.
that's the space your higher self is in. Your higher self is thinking like that, and your lower self is in misery for some reason. But I feel like, and the masterpiece is what I call it, right? The divine, God, the universe, source, whatever gravitate to, Jesus Christ, Buddha, whatever ascended master, however you are able to commune with the divine. I feel like, it's always calling you to your highest version of yourself. And I feel like it was designed intentionally to experience itself, right? Because if we had all of those things, what would we be reaching for? And the thing is, when we get those things, we still want more. We still want something else, right? Because we're always creating. We're creators, and that's what we're here to do, kind of create joyously and co-create with the divine. And that's the part that people are looking in the sky for God. But the joke is, and the reason for the smile on Buddha's face is that God is within and people are looking outside of themselves for God. That's the rub. And
Yeah.
so therein lies the misery.
Well, because until you realize that, you're just going to be miserable and you're going to keep saying, well, why does it that's not happening for me? Why is that going on? Why is
Right,
it that way? Because you haven't tapped into source. And
right.
I live by this phrase. Everything I need is within me now. It's all there. It's it's all
It
there.
is all there. Because that's a beautiful phrase. I love that. Because here's the thing too. And I like to say, if you don't go within, you will go without.
Mm,
And so people kind of have it backwards, right? Because they're looking outside of themselves for the creation, when in fact, if you haven't spent time internally to create what you see externally, you're not
mm.
going to experience it, right? And so they need to first go within, thank and be grateful for what you're creating, and then watch it manifest. It's not the other way around. And so
Well, that's a
that's
great point because what do people do? You're always looking. Oh, I'm
right.
looking for that job. I'm looking for that person. I'm looking for that car. But you're not going to
Right.
find it unless you find it, if that makes sense.
That's absolutely it, Steve. That's absolutely it. But see, that's why I love talking to you, right? Because you're awakened, you're enlightened, you know exactly what's going on. And so, but there's billions of people who are clueless. And that's the whole kind of premise of this whole thing, right? It's bigger than just being able to read someone. Because when I do a reading, I'm actually trying to help you navigate to get back on path to your journey, right? So you want to know what's going on with this man, and is he cheating on you? Is he, or if this woman is cheating on you? But how about, where's the perfect man of my dreams? How do I get there? What thoughts should I be thinking to get me on path so that I line up with that perfect person? What do I need to do to ensure there's no distraction? Like, how do I stay focused? How do I transcend my ego? That type of thinking. And so that's the spiritual awakening, if you would, for me. It's in terms of being awakened to the thoughts that are in alignment with your higher self, and consciously co-creating with your higher God self to create the life of your dreams. I mean, that's the
Hmm.
whole point of it all, you
Well,
know?
I love what you do in that the rest of us need step-by-step instructions. It's all great to talk about this. Some people may perceive it to be woo-woo stuff, but when this is what you need to do, like you just said before, instead of
Right.
talking about, well, that one's going to cheat on me, or I think they're cheating on me. Can you tell me? Can you give me insight?
Right.
Move past that. Talk about finding the right person and then get rid of them. But you
That's the
can't,
whole thing.
right?
That's the whole thing. And then the other thing is, and listen, I don't profess to be higher than thou. You know what I mean? Because everything I do is as a result of experience and also as a result of downloads. You know what I mean? Because I am claircognizant, so I'm channeling from the divine, but as a result of connection to the divine, right? Because you have to be connected to receive. And how do I know? Because I feel good, right? If I'm feeling bad, I know I'm out of alignment. And so I can't even do it. There's this woman, her name is Julia Hamrick. And she says, I choose to live in an easy world where everything is easy. And in that light, right, you're not focusing on the problems, you're focusing on the solutions, right? Spiritual solutions. So if this is happening, I don't know, somebody, I don't know, any problem that you may be going through, why don't you shift to the solution and then start focusing there and trusting that the solution will appear? You know what I'm saying? Will manifest itself, because now you've focused on that and now you've created that internally and now you can experience it externally. And so that's what I'm talking about, where most people are not even in that mindset, you know, because they're stuck on the problem. And so they get more of the problem, because then the universe says, oh, you have that problem? Oh, well, now you're going to have this problem, because it's the same vibrational frequency, right? So this person cheated on you. Well, this person at work is going to cheat on you too. They're going to do this type of thing to you too, because you're stuck there. You know, instead of, wow, I have wonderful people that I work for, good things only come into my life, you know, every day gets better for me, you know, that type of
let's
thing.
talk about that. Let's talk about that, because it's such a common thing where there's infidelity in relationships. So
Yeah,
let's say, you know, you're married and your partner has cheated, or you suspect
right,
it's going on.
right.
What kind of energy would you be putting out there for that to happen? And is it, could it be your fault that the other person cheated? And I'm not
Well, it's
talking
never
about,
your fault. It's never your fault, right? Because here, and I know what you're saying too, because you know what? We all go through that type of thing, right? Because I was married at one point. I'm divorced now. So you know,
same.
for different reasons, but neither here nor there. But the fact is that happens to most people in relationships. And
Sure.
so what I had to come to learn was there's a matter of worthiness, right? And so I feel like the divine teaches us lessons of worthiness. So what do we consider our worth? How much are we willing to put up with? If people do stuff like that, they're out of alignment with themselves,
Yes.
right? Because they have low self-worth. Because they would, you know how Jesus says, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And that's kind of the premise of the universe, right? Because we're like reflections of each other. And so treat people how you want to be treated. And so that person has low self-worth. If they're married to you and then they go cheat on you, that means they don't even care about you. And so if you decide that you want to still stay with this person who doesn't care about you, then now you don't have the self-worth, right? Can you forgive them? Okay, so you forgive them once. So do they do it again? Because then people have human behaviors, right? So then you get to the point where you say, look, my self-worth, that's a boundary. I won't accept less than that. I'm not going to accept anyone who doesn't value me. And so that's where I draw the line. So it's that type of thing, because people can get caught up in that scenario, and it could be a life lesson, and it could be for transcendence. You know, so people come into your life for a reason and a season. And
Yep.
I feel like if you're aware and awake of what's going on, because I feel like we all go through that at some point.
Sometimes the season is just way too long.
Sometimes it is way too long, Steve. That is the truth.
It is the truth. And there's been times in even my journey of the last almost 3 years, I've had people come into my life. And when I think about it, I can truly identify why they came into my life. I helped them. They helped me.
Right.
They rotated out. Other people came in. And yeah, it's interesting if you take the time to look.
If you take the time to look, but most people are caught up in this matrix. They're not reflecting. And I too can say for myself, oh, because I have a big heart, right? So I'll be like, oh, well, I'll feel sorry for this person. But you know what? I've come to learn from myself that I have boundaries. And so within those boundaries now, as a result of recognizing my self-worth, I will never settle for less than I deserve.
Yep.
And so at some point you have to know when you have to close the door too. And so I can fault myself for not doing that, and so many times,
Yes.
But we're perfectly imperfect, right?
I always say it's like I do everything for everybody else. Who's doing something for me? I'll get
Me
back to you.
too.
I'll get back to you on that because it's a common thing.
But that is so very true, right? We do everything, and sometimes we do too much, and that's
Yes.
where we have to love ourselves enough to say, no, I draw the line.
Yeah.
And that's the boundary thing. And that's kind of, I'm in this new concept of drawing boundaries and never settling for less and raising my self-worth, because I feel like I've done my lessons. I've had enough karma. I can't do it anymore. And you get to that point where you're like, look, if you don't line up with these things, keep on moving.
Yeah. And I think a lot of us have fear to put up the boundary because then let's say it's a relationship, the way somebody might react and they might turn around and say, yeah, well, you know what? You can go take off. I'm not going to hang around with you anymore. And we're afraid. But you know what? If they do that and you put a reasonable boundary up for what you deserve and you respect yourself and they have an issue with that, they don't serve you.
It's their problem.
That's
they
their
don't
problem.
Serve you.
They can leave. We're out of time. You are not just everything we said. You're also a therapist and a counselor.
That's so funny, Steve.
Seriously,
but you know what? It's all encompassing because at the end of the day, it's the same thing, right? Except, now I'm talking to you in 3D language, right? Whereas if I use the divination tools, I'm channeling the divine, which is basically all the same message. So it's always fun with you, Steve.
You too. Yeah. And I had so many other questions. We didn't get to them. What's the best way to reach you? How do we find you?
Oh my God. Okay. So, first of all, I'll give you my direct line. It's 914-826-7837. And also I have my website. It's theintuitiveone.org, theintuitive-oracle.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Pinterest under the Oracle 151. And I also have this premium chat. It's called the Intuitive Oracle. So whenever you see the Intuitive Oracle, I'm there.
Wow. Yeah.
On all platforms, okay? Including Facebook.
You can be found. You can be found.
You can find me. Yeah. If you want to. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
I believe that. And I always look where I'm waiting for the teacher. And it doesn't have to be a person. The teacher could be something that teaches you. It could be
a situation.
Right.
It could, whatever the divine has. At the end of the day, the divine is in charge, right? He sets up the circumstances, the situations, and the events. We can't control that. The only thing we can control is the direction of our thought and how we feel in any given moment in time. That's that's the free will right there. That's all we got. And that's a lot.
And great talking with you. Love having you on here and so much insight. And definitely we got to get together again. I have lots of questions.
Well, we're on. I think we got next Friday.
All right.
All right.
I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you so much, Steve. Always a pleasure. Listen, have a great weekend.
You too. All right.
All right. Take care.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.